Auburn just dominating. Paints and the points is where that game was won last night. You can talk about Janai Broome, who had 13 of his 15 in the first half. He didn't do a ton in the second. And we'll talk more about Chad Baker-Mazara and, maybe the edge that he plays on here in a little bit. But in the paint, until they made the substitutions, it was 46-14, Auburn over Oklahoma. Those Oklahoma guys, if they dribbled anywhere around the protective circle under the rim, it was block city all night long.
Yeah, that was one of those games that never felt like, Auburn was in danger of blowing that game. But you kind of wondered once you got into the second half, are they going to be able to cover this big number of 17.5? And then they ultimately pull away because we did lay the 17.5. And, the two freshmen we talked about, Fears and Forsythe, we talked with Stephen Pearl about these guys yesterday, and they were 2 of 16 from the floor. Now, they were 18 of 18 from the free throw line, and that is the only thing that kept Oklahoma in the game last night was the shots from the stripe. I mean, 27 of 29, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and you still lost by
28.
28. You did that, and you still lost by 28. Like, Oklahoma's another one of those teams, I guess we're just going to, I don't know if we're going to do this every time with Alabama and Auburn. We did it with Alabama and Georgia. I think Georgia's a good team.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Oklahoma's a good team.
I think Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Georgia, there's another tier. Like, there's a top tier of the SEC. There's an exceptional tier. I think we can almost say
there's an exceptional tier with Alabama and Auburn.
Then I think there is a really, really good, like, Sweet 16. These teams expect to get to the second weekend. And then that next tier is, are they good enough for the NCAA tournament? I think they are, but because of all the carnage in this league, I'm not exactly sure.
Later on, let's come back to that because I did want to get to because somebody, I think it's ESPN.com today, says, is Kentucky moving towards the bubble? And it got me thinking of where we are on the security of all these SEC teams, 13 in bracketology right now. So let's get back to that because it's a great question because a lot of these teams that right now are penciled in, I think the metrics, Brownie, that you always look at is going to keep re-energizing itself because of all the quad one wins and losses. Because didn't Mark Gottfried one year take a 17-15 Alabama team to the tournament because of the schedule he played?
He did.
And I think that's what's happening here.
The year before they had played nobody out of conference, and they had a really good record. I want to say they ended up with 24 wins,
24-6, I think.
Was that? And that counted like their NIT, I believe. And he was like, okay, well, then if I just need to play a tough schedule, I'll play a tough schedule. And the next year they had 17 wins. They're like, that's what we wanted you to do. We wanted you to play a tough schedule.
Yeah. Well, they put them in the tournament. Crappy record in.
That's right.
Good record out.
Yeah, the tough schedule now is just playing a regular 18-game
that's right.
Regular season schedule in the SEC. I heard Ryan Brown's favorite ex-coach Tom Crean on this morning.
I like Crean.
And he was talking about, this SEC thing is real. Yeah. Like, we're not making a big deal. I know, the football conversation, SEC has held on to that power conversation for a long time, and I think it is real too. But, in the moment right now, in college hoops where we are, I mean, this is head and shoulders the best conference.
I think Oklahoma will be thrilled not to have to play a game in this state again this year, assuming they don't play at UAB or some way. Yeah. I mean, 107-79 Alabama beat them, 98-70 Auburn beat them in this state. I wonder if you took Oklahoma fan and said, you're one in the conference, you're going to beat both Alabama and Auburn in football, and they're both going to beat you by 20-plus in basketball.
You would have taken that.
You would have taken it, but I don't think you would have believed it.
You wouldn't have believed it, no.
If you're Oklahoma, you don't know where you are. That's a great athletic program for a long time. But you don't know where you are in football. You don't know where you are in basketball. Just a year ago, Alabama had the best duo they've ever had in Nick Saban and Nate Oates. I still think Alabama's in a really good spot with Kalen DeBoer and Nate Oates. I think Auburn's in a really good spot with Hugh Freeze, very important year coming up, and Bruce Pearl. But if you're Oklahoma, is Porter Moser the future of this basketball program? Is Brent Venables really the future of this Oklahoma football program? If I'm an Oklahoma fan right now, I'm just like, damn, what is going on? We made this transition. We're making a ton of money.
Even Texas feels more fixed and better situated after the transition.
I think they have concerns about basketball, but they feel fine in football.
But I think they've always, like in basketball, they're like, damn, outside the Chris Beard moment, they've always underachieved in basketball. So Rodney Terry's kind of an unknown right now. But, yeah, I think Texas feels really good about where they are in football. You at least, if you're one of these alpha programs, you want to at least feel really good about one sport or the other. But Oklahoma, man, they're lost in the woods.
Yeah. Tim, if you can give me cut number 1, please. Bruce Pearl last night. When you talk about this Auburn team, you just start. They can shoot it sometimes. They missed. They were 2 of 12 from 3 after Miles hit the first one out of the gate. They struggled a little bit from 3 last night, but it didn't matter because of what Bruce talks about here. They even if they're not scoring at a high rate, their defense can just smother you. Here's Bruce Pearl.
Listen, Oklahoma is an outstanding offensive team. They really are. Those numbers bear out. They're not an elite defensive team. They just don't have enough size. And so I wouldn't make too much about what we did offensively, other than the fact that I thought we shared it. And, but the fact that we held them under, that to me, that would be the story of the fact that we made a really good offensive team. And, with the exception of maybe foul, I mean, they made 27, they made 18 baskets. Pretty good defense.
Yeah, it was the block shots, the steals, the hustle, just such good basketball last night from Auburn against Oklahoma in that win.
He basically said their defense sucks.
Yeah, he did. They're not elite. Now they're 69th at the KenPom. I just looked. I think that's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't mind the fact that we scored 98 on this team.
Yeah, ignore that.
Well, you talk about their defense. Like basically the only way they scored was from the free throw line.
69th in KenPom.
Yeah.
That's where they are defensively. So if that's not elite, there's 300 some odd teams. Boy, you better be good. If Auburn looks at that and says that's not an elite defense, which it's not. 69 is not elite defense.
Yeah. Where's Alabama's again?
40. I'll have to look after last night. I don't know if they moved up or not, but it's above that. Yeah, Alabama is 40. Right at 40. They're creeping up. I don't know if they could close the gap, but they're creeping up on Taylor's KenPom graphic.
I'll just take you into Alabama basketball Twitter real quick. When we talk about that, they say that we are not considering style of play, or the metrics don't consider style of play there.
Pace. I mean, Alabama plays at a higher pace, so teams are going to get more possessions against Alabama. That's just.
I thought this was adjusted defensive efficiency, which I think does take into account pace, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think it does.
I don't want to get Bama Twitter upset about it.
No. There is you've already done that to Auburn Twitter once this week. There is a way, I think, if you're a member of KenPom, you could adjust it for pace. I am not a KenPom member.
Yeah.
So I cannot do that.
Well, what's the price on that? I could drop
$24.95 for the year.
Yeah, I'd rather have Paramount Plus.
Yeah. I was going to say I could drop one of my streaming services. If it was $9.99.
Do you think that's one of those rocket whatever? 80% of adults don't know what subscriptions they've got.
Yeah.
I've got KenPom.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
Well, Maggie and I just over the holidays.
Back when Syracuse was good.
Maggie and I just over the holidays found out we each had. I think it was Paramount because that's where Landman was.
You
right?
both had it.
Yeah, we both had it.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, what's the? I had to log back in on the Paramount, and she was like, well, it's Maggie blah 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 at gmail.com, and I said, no, it's in my account. It's under my name, Jim Dunaway Sports at gmail.com, and she goes, baby, I'm looking at it right here. And I said, we may have two.
Yes.
And we did. We were paying for two.
Do you think you and Maggie have ever been on the same page financially?
Nope. But, we have a good time.
That's all that matters.
Speaking of a good time.
You take that good time to the grave. You can't take that money to the grave, Jimmy D.
Speaking of a good time, and I don't want to be Jimmy Downer here.
Oh, boy.
But I just want to ask the question because I was there last night, and I saw it percolating all night long. And I will say this up front. Oklahoma was about as cheap shot, dirty, smack-talking, bad basketball team I've ever seen. Usually if you talk that much crap,
you win,
and throw that many elbows or, come over somebody's back really hard and knock them down and then talk crap to them. And the Fears kid, I mean, he's got a little Jim Dunaway schmarmy in him, how he's not been punched between the nose, right, or between the eyes. On the court, I don't know, but that Fears kid last night was just wanting to get punched by somebody. So I say all that up front, and please make sure if this goes out that is included, Taylor. That Yeah, I would have thrown a punch probably last night.
Right.
But seeing it escalate to what was basically a fourth grade stick your tongue out at the opponent technical foul on Chad Baker-Mazara that ended up being a common foul, then a technical foul that had him go to the bench with about 9 minutes left in the game. Did anybody have any PTSD over Yale last year? Is there a concern that such a vital part of what Auburn can be rose to that level again last night?
I thought it was really interesting in our conversation with Stephen Pearl yesterday where he talked about that Bruce Pearl allows this team to play with an edge. Like he allows his guys to kind of play in their personality. And that's a double-edged sword. It can and listen, that's not the only thing in basketball or football that could get you beat. Each coach does it different ways, right? But that's a double-edged sword. Like when you've got emotional guys and you allow them to play with emotion, it can occasionally boil over. It was the reason they lost to Yale last year. The reason, period, end of sentence. They beat Yale with Chad Baker-Mazara in that game.
Didn't the coaches tell us afterwards that most of the game plan was the mismatch they had with Chad Baker-Mazara?
I don't know.
And I think I remember that
they did.
That was the post-game comment. We had so much of the game plan was the Chad Baker-Mazara mismatch we had on the Yale guys that when he went out, we quickly were adjusting.
Yeah, but that's your concern when you allow guys to play with emotion. You can't have a situation in a game with a better opponent than Oklahoma where you pick up your fourth and fifth foul on the same play. I mean, that's disastrous.
I do think the scary thing is, the last three outings, they've won these games by double digits, but once you get into the tournament, you're going to have one-possession games night in, night out, even in first-round matchups against – inferior competition like Yale. Now, you don't have a KD Johnson this year.
Right.
That's a little different.
Yeah. Talking about a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Yeah. But to your point is the personality. It's why last year I picked them to win the tournament. I thought they had a swagger coming out of Nashville that they continue to have. They play with a lot of mustard. They will, especially when they're at home, they will celebrate going to the bench with the student section, and it really gets revved up in there. And
Cardwell plays to the camera. He plays to the fans. I mean, and I got no problem with that.
No. I mean, it can be a huge advantage for your team.
Well, I mean, I think it's just emblematic of what Bruce Pearl believes in. And as Steven said, he's always done this. There's nothing new with him. He's always allowed his big personalities to be big personalities and his emotional guys to be emotional guys. And that's his coaching philosophy, and it's difficult to argue with the number of wins that Bruce Pearl has. He's got a Final Four on his resume.
85 Bears. A lot of dynamic personalities.
Yeah.
One of the greatest NFL teams of all time.
And quite the comparison.
Well, I'm not comparing the teams. What I'm about to say is an even bigger comparison. But
some of that.
And what I'm about to say is an even bigger comparison. And let me say on the front end, I am not saying these teams are anything alike other than what we're talking about here.
I know where you're going.
Big personalities that the coach let be big personalities, and it blew up occasionally, but it worked, and it's the 96 Bulls. That's not where you thought I was going.
I was going to say the Miami Hurricanes in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, that by and large worked. Now, I'm not saying Auburn's the 96 Bulls or the 85 Bears or the 80s Hurricanes.
Well, and this is a one-off,
are.
too. I guess the 85 Bears, well, they kind of were. I mean, they only won one championship.
But I'm saying this team, they entertain the crowds. And when they're on the road, they have no problem playing the villains. And I think that can help you as long as you don't cross that line. Up to the line. When Chad Baker-Mazara is guarding you, I mean, that guy is in your back pocket, and he pisses you off because he is so high energy. I mean, when Chad Baker's on you, there's no just dribbling it up the floor. You're having to work your ass off every time.
I mean, just that one turnover where we just hung back and picked the inbound
crouching
pass.
tiger.
Yeah.
He shot an air ball.
That's right.
And everybody else went back. He went crouching tiger, basically behind another Oklahoma player waiting for the little lazy pass, and he came out of nowhere, stole it.
It's amazing how often that happens, too.
I mean,
how often guys are just lazy with the inbound. They're just not looking.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get. And I think the Yale thing, and again, if we send out any on this, make sure this is included. I think the Yale thing is such a one-off and a technical foul in last night's situation I think they were looking to throw one at Auburn at some point.
They were trying to get control of the game.
Yeah, and to make up for one they threw on, I forget which one, number 0. Maybe that was Fears early on. The refs like to leave the court with close to the same number of fouls called, close to the same number of technicals and that thing. I sort of think him playing on the edge is an advantage, and I wouldn't raise too big of a concern. But in our chat last night, there were a couple of legit Auburn fans with Auburn avatars that were like, "Oh, come on now, we got to be more mature than let this happen again."
It'll be a double tech that bounces in from the tournament now.
You can't, not this year.
I just, that can get you beat in Tuscaloosa against Alabama.
Well, that's where we went last night. We'll have plenty of time next week to talk about this. My fear is that this thing's going to be wrapped so tight from both sides. I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about the players, the teams. This thing's going to be wrapped so tight. I hope it's a really high quality basketball game with no crap around it, no technicals, no pushing, no shoving.
And that could get you
no
beat there.
Throwing.
Auburn, no chair throwing, I would hope.
No table breaks.
Auburn closes the season before they host Alabama at Texas A&M and at Kentucky. Yeah. It's actually at Kentucky and at Texas A&M. Yeah, it could get you beat in a place like that. I mean, it's not going to get you beat at home against Oklahoma. You're a much better team than them. But, you just can't. I mean, it's stuff like if I let you play to the edge, you can't go over the edge. But I think sometimes when you're a coach that lets a guy play to the edge, occasionally you don't mind him going over the edge, right?
Well, they're going to go over the edge if they play close to the edge.
If I let him play close to the edge, and that's the way I think he plays best, I got to take it if he goes over the edge a little bit.
That's exactly right. You just don't want it to be the Yale game like it was last year. Well, you can take a technical in a game because it's an advantage the way he plays. It's an advantage. And his personality. Those guys have such great chemistry. They, even after they're on the bench being subbed out for the rest of the night, they're cutting. They have a little running joke. I don't know what it is, but they were popping each other on the side of the head and with towels and slapping each other's back and laughing and having a good time over on the bench. It's an interesting basketball team. It's the best team in the country right now, and they had no problem with Oklahoma, perceived tournament team right now, last night at home. And they get Florida this weekend. We'll talk about that game a little bit later in the show. One more basketball note involving Auburn and Alabama, and those two games coming up. So whatever service you want to go to, just look for ticket prices February 15th in massive Coleman Coliseum. And if you also can, pull up, see if there's any available for that March whatever game down at Neville between Alabama and Auburn, because the coffee guy this morning, Grady, he was like, "Oh, I got on there and looked, and they were going for $1,000 a pop."
You're getting at ATIX. You're getting at ATIX in Section Z, which is
Coleman Coliseum.
This is Coleman corner baseline. I'm trying to determine if that's facing bench or opposite bench.
Yeah, corner baseline may be obstructed view at Coleman. There's a few. I mean, seriously, there's a few seats at Coleman.
Are there really?
I don't think you get the full lane. I do believe there's a couple of those.
Now this is from Dunaway. Remember, he was behind the bench and he was bitching about those tickets.
Row one. What's your guess on get in? Corner end zone get in.
I will say 340.
I'll go 500.
ATIX, y'all are on either side. ATIX get in 444 per ticket. Section Z, row 33. That sounds pretty high and pretty corner.
Boy, that is a lot for a regular season basketball game.
444 for that one right now. Let's go to
for two teams that are locks for the NCAA tournament. The outcome of that game
means nothing
unless you're just all into the SEC regular season race, which I guess everybody is.
Standing room only is all they've got available right now at Neville because that game's so far away. The tickets haven't really hit the market yet.
And for those that don't know, there is a standing rail, which I think on level 2, but I don't think you get the rail. I think somebody has tickets for the standing rail. I think
you're standing behind the standing.
And I do know standing room only on level 3 where we are in the media. People stand behind Taylor and me in standing room only, and if I lean this way, they lean that way. And if I lean this way, they lean that way. And for the big games, there are people doing that at Neville Arena. So what's that price for standing room?
What do you think standing room only is? Auburn and Alabama in Neville.
I'm going to go 500.
I would go 375.
$699. $700 for standing room only.
Now that is not even guaranteed. Like you're
guaranteed in, right?
That's right, but it's not even a guarantee. You're in the front of the standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just in the only.
Yeah. At that point, you are fighting for space
Boy.
to see the court.
I don't know if I'd pay $700 to stand at my daughter's wedding, much less at a college basketball game.